Good evening. This is my MARP presentation on game-based learning. This is for Education 548. Game-based learning is a strategy in which you reach a targeted learning goal through gameplay. The goal of game-based learning is designed to balance subject matter with gameplay and the ability of the player to retain and apply said subject matter to the real world. There are quite a few benefits to game-based learning. Some of them are higher engagement, higher retention, making connections with the curriculum to the real world. It is accessible to all levels, and it promotes critical thinking. The difference between gamification and game-based learning. Gamification is different from game-based learning because in gamification, you are simply applying game-like mechanics to classwork. But in game-based learning, we are simply learning through games. In this next slide, you're going to see an example of a game called Variant Limits. This is a great example of GBL. This game takes abstract ideas of calculus and lets the user apply them to tasks in the game. Here's the video.
This works. Yes.
From engineering to medicine to 3D graphics, calculus is foundational for all STEM careers. However, calculus courses today have among the highest failure rates of any course on any campus, and there is a growing body of evidence that explicitly ties calculus to attrition in STEM degrees. At Tricium, our team collaborates with educators to address these complex educational issues and transform how students learn. Welcome to Variant Limits, the first in a new series of immersive educational experiences for calculus students. Variant Limits brings calculus to life by transforming abstract ideas into creative and visually engaging challenges. As an explorer on a planet governed by calculus principles, students will discover a vibrant 3D world. Throughout the world, students will overcome obstacles by applying skills and concepts learned in class. Students will gain a new perspective on difficult topics such as limit laws, continuity, and the intermediate value theorem, and use their experiences within the game to construct and retain calculus knowledge. Variant Limits promotes conceptual understanding through direct interaction and immediate feedback in the game environment. By providing students an opportunity to take a more active role in the learning process, Variant engages and motivates students like no other learning tool. As students advance, learning is recorded via the instructor portal, which provides detailed information and tracking tools. A revolutionary new way to teach calculus, an innovative tool to empower and engage students. The first in a series that will transform the calculus experience. Play to learn with Variant Limits.
Now I can tell you this looks like homework I want to do, but the data speaks for itself. Students' homework play an average of 10 times between 2 and 4 hours. I don't know any other homework students are willingly doing that often to get better, to master a subject. And while our own studies are still ongoing, a teacher in Italy recently used this game in her class. Last year, 80% of her class succeeded. It was pretty good. This year, the first time she used the game in her class, and the rate went to 100%. Everybody mastered the subject. Not only did they master the subject, but the average grade went up by about 10% across the entire class. Now that's pretty powerful. And
So speaking from personal experience, I know I struggled with math, and I also struggled with focusing in math classes. So if I know I had a game where I can learn at my own pace, I would have benefited from this a lot more, especially since you can visualize what you're doing mathematically in the game. I think that's what attracts the students most. And it definitely does go over a few of the benefits of game-based learning. These students are obviously engaged. The retention is likely to be higher since they're learning in a fun way. They're able to make connections with the real world, and it's accessible, well, at calculus level to all levels. And lastly, it promotes critical thinking. But when does it make sense to use GBL? Well, it makes sense to use GBL to re-engage and change the pace of a classroom. This teaching strategy not only allows you to re-engage students who are bored, but it also challenges students who may find the subject matter too easy. Lastly, it is a great way to promote critical thinking. Game-based learning is similar to taking a field trip in the sense where you let the class know what to expect and what to look out for before arriving. And then when you arrive to the destination, the students go out on their own and they explore the things, and they explore it by themselves. One creative teacher has his students play Minecraft in order to compare it to the difficulties of setting up a colony in Jamestown. For those who have never played Minecraft, you apparently build structures throughout the day, and at night, creepers come and attack your buildings and structures, and this is where he draws the parallels between the Native Americans destroying colonies, or I guess harassing the colonizers, and the creepers destroying your structures in the game. Another teacher has his students play werewolf, and in the game, the objective is to identify who is the werewolf, and the teacher kind of compares this to the Salem witch trials and how they would kind of go about accusing people of witchcraft. Another teacher, Matthew Farber, he has his class play the game Plague in order to demonstrate how disease travels and how the bubonic plague made its way around the world and throughout the Silk Roads. This is another example of how game-based learning is a way for the students to learn from the curriculum and apply it to real-life situations. So in this case, the students would have played the game, understood how disease travels, and then they would have read the chapter on the Silk Roads and understand the parallels. It is important to remember that the game is not the teacher. However, the teacher should try to avoid intervening when the students are trying to figure something out. This promotes critical thinking and collaboration. You should also try not to be too concerned with grading the students' play, but instead assess what they have learned and keep track of ways to improve the game. During GBL, the teacher is a manager and should be managing throughout gameplay. Here are a few ways you can manage.
So, how do you manage gameplay? Step 1. Think about how you manage your classroom. A game isn't some sort of special zone where anything goes. Before using a game, think about rules and procedures you already have in your classroom. Leverage those to manage gameplay. For example, what are your rules for cleaning up after an activity? Review those rules with your students and apply them here. Step 2. Everyone plays a role. Depending on the type of game you're using, you may want to create student roles. One role may be a material manager who hands out, organizes, and collects game pieces. Other roles could be a timekeeper, note-taker, or scorekeeper. Step 1. Be a facilitator, not a firefighter. Even if the answer to a question is a simple yes or no, guide your students to discover the answer on their own. And, if several students have the same question, stop gameplay and have a quick class discussion about that question. Step 2. Iterate and improvise. If there's a common concern that develops, go ahead and make changes to the game right then and there. Who knows, you might create a unique game that opens up new learning for your students. Step 3. Be a cheerleader. Support students in their learning through gameplay. Keep an eye out for great moves or successful strategies that occur and share them with the class. Step 4. Wrap it up. Plan ahead for the possibility that your students might not fully finish the game by the end of class. So make sure you're clear on how you return to the game. Gather feedback. For example, ask your students what they learned from the game, what they liked and disliked, and what they might change about the game. Thanks for watching.
And here you were able to see how these teachers in the video, they created their own game. And that you can do no problem. Obviously, it just takes a lot of creativity, planning, and thinking. Going into assessments. GBL, there are a few ways to actually assess through game-based learning, and there are already platforms that are amazing for it. For instance, there is Kahoot, and you may have already heard of Quizlet. Kahoot and Quizlet are platforms that allow educators to create a quiz, and it's great because you can also track results. And you can find correlations between students missing or getting certain answers right. The best thing about Quizlet and Kahoot is that when you're taking it, there's less pressure and it feels more of a game than an actual quiz. So it's a little more of a relaxed, fun way to assess students and test their actual knowledge. Here are my references. Thank you.